the call.
Yay!
I think the video magic has worked. We even hear him.
I had to run it off my LTE.
No kidding.
The cables
it just wouldn't work over
there.
Are you in like an Airbnb type thing?
Yeah. They got Time Warner, and it's just terribly slow.
Wow. Like it wouldn't even let you join. Okay, we still don't see video. Is that on purpose though? Which is fine.
No, I think it's just not doing it. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
If it's Skype over phone, if it doesn't have bandwidth, it won't do it.
Yeah, sometimes it won't. That's all right. If you get it working, great. If not, we have a lovely picture of you. Yeah. We're just seeing a black screen when you talk, so.
Usually
Sorry.
The little icon, don't we get that?
If you turn video off, you get the icon. If you have video on and it's just not working, you get a black screen.
Okay. Well, I can turn it off so you get the icon.
All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Is that cool? Ready?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Let's rock and roll. Here we go. That's not going to work. How about if I do that?
This is a DTNS announcement. A message in English will follow. Välkommen till showen med dagliga teknologiska nyheter med Tom Merritt och gäster. Jag heter Carl och är en av flera exekutiva medproducenter och alltså en av Toms chefer. Det kan du också bli genom att donera $1 eller mer i månaden på patreon.com.
This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, June 15th, 2016. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Scott Johnson, as he does most Wednesdays. Back on a Wednesday this week. How's it going, Scott?
I'm good. I feel like I was just here. It was Friday we last had a little chat.
No, and I was in your seat, and you were in the hallway. Thanks for letting me crash at your studio, by the way.
Fun. You left it nice and warm. Everything's good. I'm really glad to be back. And it's been a whirlwind week with all this E3 coverage, and I'm just excited to be here so we can talk about some of the more technical aspects of what's been going on this week.
Absolutely. Raj Deut is joining us as well, not from Australia this time, so he's up at a reasonable hour. You are in E3 land. You've been covering E3. You're downtown LA.
I am in downtown LA. The internet gods have not been very kind to me, though. No video for me today, but hopefully you can hear me nice and it's coming through okay, so that'll work well.
Your audio's coming in well. Let's just blame E3 for sucking up all the bandwidth.
Definitely.
We're going to talk a little bit, not so much about the details of E3, which we've all covered in various places fairly thoroughly, but we're going to talk a little bit about, is E3 necessary? And Raj has been on the floor, so I know he's got a perspective on that. Scott and I have got our own perspectives on that. But we must get to the top stories first. Mark Zuckerberg confirms he is not a lizard. Here are the rest of the top stories. Safari 10 will disable Flash, Java, Silverlight, and QuickTime plugins by default. In macOS Sierra, the browser will default to HTML5 when available. Otherwise, users will have to authorize the plugin to run. Users can whitelist plugins to run on specific sites in the browser's settings. So, ladies and gentlemen, should we pour a little out for Flash finally?
Yeah, or pour a little out for all the stuff that tends to sometimes bog us down, and maybe pour a little out for Apple for finally getting on the ball and implementing things that have been plugins for other browsers for a long time. That's really all this is, and it's nice to have it baked in, so I think it's good.
Yeah, Raj, are you going to miss Flash?
No, not at all. I don't have Flash. I have Flash installed in a VM for testing a few things when I'm doing web development stuff, but I have no need for Flash, don't want Flash, nor Silverlight or Java or any of those things. So this is fine. This is push forward, get rid of them all, and plug those security holes in the process.
I agree. Well, if you're in the mood to retweet yourself, you can now do that on Twitter. Retweeting yourself is available. It's a way to put a tweet in front of people who may have missed it the first time around without having to do the ICYMI. I saw this in effect yesterday with Daily Tech News Show's own Patrick Beja from France as he was testing it, and he was going pretty deep. It was like tweet inception, about 5 tweets deep on retweeting himself. And when I first started about this, I thought, well, it's just, I think I can do that now, but it's more like quoting a tweet from somebody else but doing it for yourself. And this is useful to me because I may put up some content on a Monday and think, well, most people got it, but on Tuesday, people that hadn't checked Twitter or it flew by their feed, here's a chance for them to see it. So a great way to pull that stuff up without having to retype it all. So I suppose I'm for this. Raj, does this help you at all in communicating with your base?
Yeah, it does a lot, especially for, I mean, it already happens now. You see programs in websites and especially like WordPress plugins that will retweet on a schedule based on content that you push out. So I know a lot of news outlets that are sort of, you know, that the story comes out, they push out a tweet, and then 3 hours later or 6 hours later they send out another tweet with pretty much the exact same content or slightly worded differently, just in case people didn't see it the first time around. So at least this way you sort of, if you're quoting or you know you're doing using the retweet function, you're probably getting analytical data with that as well. So you're not splitting it across. Even though it is a new tweet, you can link it back to the origin. So you're not tracking two separate lines as such if you tweet out a whole new one. So I could see it being useful in that regard.
Tom, do you think that there's been a lot of stuff on the internet about how this is just a narcissistic tool for people to just like?
Well, okay, yeah. Let's look at that because on the one hand, people were doing this already. They just had to cut and paste. So this allows those people to do it easier by pressing one button. And as Raj very astutely points out, it helps with the analytics. On the other hand, I find this annoying. It is the hit radio problem, right? If you listen to top 40 radio more than 20 minutes, you're going to keep hearing the same songs because it's not designed for people who listen to the radio for more than 20 minutes at a time. So if you're in the audience of people who reads Twitter regularly, you're going to keep seeing these retweets, and you're going to be like, it's so annoying. On the other hand, I probably won't ever notice it because I don't read Twitter that religiously. So my objections, I think, are purely academic, but I just don't like repeating the same thing over and over again.
Well, and even if this takes off and gets huge and everyone loves retweeting themselves, the problem that I see with it is that if you are a user of TweetDeck like me, you're not going to get the feature anyway because they seem to be not updating that software with any new features past, I don't know, likes got hearts a while back. And that was
yeah, what's
bad.
up with that? I had to go open Twitter in a browser tab instead of using TweetDeck to try out this feature.
Yeah, so it's frustrating as a TweetDeck user and knowing that Twitter owns TweetDeck and they're not keeping it in parity with the regular Twitter or the regular Twitter mobile and desktop browser updates, and it's frustrating. So don't look for this anytime soon, is my estimation on TweetDeck.
Oh, good. All my TweetDeck friends won't be retweeting themselves. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Here's some news on the iOS App Store. Craig Federighi told John Gruber that default apps are still baked into the operating system, and deleting them only removes them from the home screen and deletes associated user data. So it just removes the hooks. The binary is still tied to the operating system. So then when you re-download them from the App Store, it's unclear what that really means since the binaries were never removed. Also, Apple will require all apps in the App Store to enable app transport security by January 1st, 2017. That forces HTTPS connections for the app using an encrypted TLS v1.2 connection. So you will get encryption of all the things within apps. No more allowing app developers to turn that off and give straight-up HTTP connections.
You think a lot of people were worried about how much room that apps were taking and less about what they were cosmetically doing to their home pages and things? I think this kind of still solves the problem for most people.
Yeah.
But there's got to be somebody out there who's like, man, that calendar app's probably taking up a couple of gigabytes I could use, and they'll be frustrated.
It's both, right? Most people probably just want to get it off the home screen so they don't have to look at it anymore. But yeah, if you're getting tight on space, it would be nice to get rid of the Tips app and free up a little space. Raj, what do you think?
Yeah, it'd be good. I think myself, like a lot of people, have a folder that they hide away on a second or third screen that just has a bunch of these apps that you can't remove. Whether they're deleted from the phone, yeah, it would make a lot more sense, I think, for everyone if they actually did have the binaries removed, so you did have that space other than just hiding it. But that's essentially what we've been doing by tucking them away. So, but Apple are going to do what Apple are going to do, right? So
Sure.
that's and some of those functionality is baked into the OS, like your notification widget screens with stock information. Perhaps that ties into the binary for the app. I'm not sure, and that's the reason why they want to keep it there, because perhaps you want to have the notification widget, but you don't want to have the actual app itself. I'm not an iOS engineer, so I couldn't tell you if that's true or not. But the TLS stuff, well, I mean, PayPal are going through the throes of that too, advising everyone they need to update and get on board with the latest sort of encryption stuff, which is just common sense and something that needed to be done.
Yeah, and the other thing about the deletion of the apps too, I was excited that if I could get them from the App Store, that would mean they would get updated out of cycle. You don't have to wait for an operating system update to update the app. But apparently, that wouldn't be possible, or would it? I'm a little confused on that now.
Yeah, they haven't been real clear. Well, Netflix is being clear about a change to iOS, which I'm actually excited about as a pro owner. Viewers with compatible iPads running iOS 9.3.2 are now going to be able to use picture-in-picture to keep watching Netflix video while doing other things on the tablet. Thank freaking goodness. This is totally me. Other video apps like Hulu have been doing this previously. HBO Now does this as well. It will be really nice to see Netflix do this. This is actually a way for me to sometimes I'll open a video app and I'll be watching something and I'll forget what service I'm using. And so I'll go out thinking, oh, this is just going to stay up in the corner for me while I'm checking Twitter or while I send this message to Tom or whatever. And then away it goes. I'm like, oh, I must have been watching that movie on Netflix. It's super frustrating not to be sort of on par with the other apps. So this is good news if you're a Netflix user and somebody who likes your iOS iPads, because now you can have a little window of it.
It's a great example of the problem with the app ecosystem, though.
Yeah.
Like running video in a windowing operating system that we've had since the 80s means it's always there in a corner. You could put it there. You can leave it there. You can put it wherever you want. Suddenly, in mobile operating systems, it becomes a feature that has to be added per app. It's just ridiculous to me.
Weird.
I don't know. Raj, does it make any difference to you?
Not really. Sorry.
That's all right. Your internet doesn't want you to answer that question anyway. Quartz reports that Facebook's head of Europe, Middle East, and Africa, Nicola Mendelsohn, told a conference in London yesterday that in 5 years, Facebook will probably be all video. Mendelsohn said video conveys more information quickly anyway, and the company is seeing year-on-year declines in text. She also predicted virtual reality will grow, and 360 video will be commonplace soon.
All right, I have issues with this. Issue number one. Fine, I agree. Video is on the rise. Video will not leave us. Video is going to be here forever, and it will just evolve with platforms, and I get it. However, I don't want, if there is a long-form subject on Facebook or anywhere else that I would like to read, and I want to skip around, I don't know how to do that in the video because I don't know what the video is made of unless they start giving us like chapter skipping type stuff or some other controls that let us have real-time control over that information like we do a written article. I can look at a glossary. I can jump to page 5. I can do those sorts of things.
You can scan. You can scan written text.
There you go. You're looking for keywords. You're looking for a paragraph that jumps out at you. All that kind of stuff. And I promise you, this is not coming from Scott's getting old kind of place because I could see that argument. But I'm all about video, and I think it's great. But until they give me ways to browse in a similar way, let me scan in a similar way. There's got to be some way to do it. I'm not saying it's impossible. But as it stands today, the way video works on Facebook, freaking forget it. It's going to have to change if this is going to come true.
Yeah, man. I was looking for information on how to extract a stripped screw the other day, with a screwdriver. And everything was video. And I'm like, well, at a certain point, I might want a video to show me exactly how they're doing it, but I want to read the descriptions first. I want to read lists of tools, and I want to scan through that before I have to sit there and spend time waiting till they get in the video to the part where I'm like, okay, that's how they're doing it. Nope, that's not going to work for me, and then move on. It's not scannable.
Right. I mean, even in YouTube, you go in there and the YouTube video is going to start with some intro you don't care about. A guy's going to go, hi, thanks, like and subscribe to my channel, and then you're going to have to listen to whatever that is on whatever bad mic he's got, and you're not sure if you got a good quality one or not, or if you was right. There's no vetting of this stuff. Google maybe.
I guess you could make the same argument about text. Some people don't write things very scannably or well, but yeah.
Good, but I would argue that video is not quite where we are with text or Google.
You have to invest more time to get into the video to find that out. You can see that in text pretty quickly.
In some videos, they can go in and make, bookmarks. They can say, all right, well, click here to jump ahead to whatever, and that's working. That's functioning part of what YouTube lets people do. But it's completely up to the person making it. There's no quality standards. It's just kind of all over the map. So maybe I agree with this, but it's in a future where video is much more malleable and much less. What's the word? It just can't be all over the place. The reason text works is because it's generally formatted in a way that we all see it and go for it.
Not to mention Facebook is pushing video, so it's in their best interest to make it sound like that's the way the world's going. Of course, they're seeing more video uptake because they didn't have any video on the platform a few years ago, and it is certainly something that could happen in places with plentiful bandwidth. But as Raj is experiencing right now, even here in the United States, we don't always have bandwidth. Like, Raj, do you think Facebook being all video sounds like a good idea to you?
Not really, but then I'm not Facebook's target market, I don't think. I generally don't go in there unless I absolutely have to these days. And when I do, it's just a sea of what you see on America's Got Talent, or someone's latest hairstyling technique, or things that just don't use.
It's a vast waste.
The way it originally was with updates with time sync, it makes no sense for me to be in there. And when it was useful, for keeping friends and family updated, photos and things like that, that stuff is just lost in this sea of BuzzFeed, pretty much.
And now you can get BuzzFeed videos, right, Scott?
That's totally right. Well, now operating systems always mean new lists of old devices. Oh, sorry. New operating systems always means new lists of old devices that can't be upgraded. Apple's iOS 10 will no longer work with the following devices. Well, those with A5 chips mainly. That means no new OS for iPads 1 through 3 and Mini, that'd be the Mini one, iPod Touch 5th gen and older, and iPod 4S and older.
iPhone 4S.
What did I say? Oh, iPod, I meant iPhone. iPhone 4S and older. And then, of course, macOS Sierra will not work on Macs from 2009 and before. Finally, there is a Mac in my house that will no longer take an upgrade. I'm kind of sad about that. But, hey, my wife uses it. She doesn't care. It doesn't matter. But, yeah, this is end of life for a few of these things, which have come up a lot lately, these end of life reports about who's going to support what and for how long.
Yeah, I guess some people are saying, well, for mobile devices, 4 years isn't too bad, which is also, again, a very sad thought, considering that people can still use Windows XP and run software on it even if it's not supported, which I guess is true for this. You're just not going to be able to get the new operating system. So there's a certain point where it's like, well, older older laptops can't take Windows 8 or Windows 10 either. So at what point do we cut it off? But yeah, this is the first time where I actually have an iPad that I still use as a prompter on a video camera that will not be able to get iOS 10. This will be the first operating system that it can't get. So I feel like we're starting to use these devices a little longer than we used to, and yet these cycles are not changing.
Right, and they're not. It's not really that short of amount of time. Like iPads 1 through 3, you're talking about 2010 to 2012, early 2012 or whatever it is. iPod Touch stuff, all these things are indicating that we've got a good 5-6 years of use out of these things before you had to put them on that list, and that's going to be true across the board. It can't all. I mean, I'd love it if my Commodore 64 still got updates, but that's not going to happen, is it?
Open source, maybe. On the other hand, I'm speaking specifically about iOS when I'm complaining. Mac OS Sierra, 7 years, that seems okay, especially because you'll still be able to use Mavericks on those 2009 laptops with security updates just fine.
Yeah. I remember when my PC was lucky to get me through 2 or 3 years, so I think 7 is not bad, and you're still using it if it works.
Music service Rhapsody is rebranding itself as Napster. Huh? Huh? Yes. Rhapsody acquired the name to Rhapster Rhapster. That's what they should have called it. Acquired the name to Napster when Rhapsody acquired what was left of the company in 2011. The Verge notes that Rhapsody began using the Napster name and logo in Canada back in November. Maybe that was a test for this. CEO Mike Davis confirmed that yes, layoffs are coming to Rhapsody, but he also said the service saw 35% growth in paid subscribers last year, finishing with 3.5 million customers. Now, Rhapsody was one of the first to the digital music market long before we had a chance to actually get a fair number of songs on platforms, and DRM was still heavy long before Spotify stole the show for streaming music, and they've just barely hung in there. But is digging up a name circa 1999 really the thing that's going to turn things around?
I hope they listen to this show, because as far as I'm concerned, Tom, you coined the better name. I would use a service called Rhapsody. That'd be far. What'd you say, Rhapster? That's what I'd call it.
Yeah, the service was called Rhapsody.
It was called Rhapsody.
Yeah.
I would use a service called Rhapster, and I would hope that it's filled primarily with rap.
Yeah.
But no, it's a weird thing. It is a weird thing with branding. I don't know that the cachet is there still. Nobody thinks of. In fact, in my own head, somebody who saw the coming of Napster, the height of it, and then the going away of it, I still think of it as kind of a weird, washed-up brand, because they did try to go legit shortly after things got ugly in a legal way, and when they did, nobody cared anymore. It lost its edge. Its cool factor went away. So it's never had any real weight since it was this underground weirdness. And without that, I don't know what you've got here. Maybe Rhapsody's that desperate and they've just got to figure something out, and maybe the test in Canada went well. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it did. Maybe I'm absolutely wrong. I mean, the opposite can be true too. The company that bought the Commodore name has struggled for years to recapture the belovedness of that name and translate it into sales. They've put out, PCs that are in the original form factor and everything. They haven't got out of business, I guess, so maybe it's worked to a certain extent, but it's not like everybody's like embracing Commodore again, and that is a name that everyone loved. I'm not sure that people loved the name Napster. It was sort of a brief moment in time. It would be like somebody starting up a new Instacart or DoorDash and calling it Cosmo. And just being like, hey, remember the dot-com boom? Remember Cosmo? We're bringing it back. Or if Amazon called their grocery delivery service Webvan.
Yeah, or if Squarespace renamed themselves GeoCities.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't say it's a wrong thing, and it's certainly a nice logo, and it's a recognizable name. And maybe that's all they're after is, hey, when people are out there looking at services, Rhapsody just falls off the radar. People don't know about it, but boy, everybody knows that name Napster, and maybe it's just got better SEO still. I don't know.
Yeah, or enough time has gone by that maybe they can bring it back. Who knows? But good luck, guys. I think this is going to be a weird uphill battle, and sad about those layoffs.
Well, thanks to everyone who submits things on our subreddit. Submit your stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Jason Phil, SP Sheridan, Loki Robert, Boba Fetish 13 was in there today. Lots of folks letting us know cool tech stories we could talk about and bringing them to you. So even if you just get into the subreddit and follow it, maybe vote on a few stories you think are worth us talking about, that helps. dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. That's a look at the top stories. All right, so E3 is winding down, which means I think we're day 2 of 3 or something like that. Like all conferences, all the press conferences happen before the show even opens, and everybody leaves before the show actually gets going. But this is not the first time that it has been preceded by questions of its relevancy. And I dug up a story from June 2012 on the LA Times by Alex Pham, and to place it in your mind, Scott, this was the same week that Knights of Amalur was released.
Oh, man.
So that's where it is in your pantheon of gaming history. Alex Pham wrote, E3, is it still relevant in a changing market? He noted that packaged video games were in decline and that mobile games and low-budget games are on the rise, and people like Apple don't attend E3. And the question was, does anybody care anymore? Well, 4 years later, we can say that, sure, mobile games are still hot, and companies like the Fallout are going to make a Fallout mobile game, and that helps. And mobile games have not undermined E3. The decline of package sales is well documented by now, but downloadable content, digital sales still make it worth coming to E3. Now, May 17th of this year, Matthew Hayes, writing for Cheat Code Central, points out, well, companies can make their own announcements now. They can go direct to fans. Nintendo does that all the time. Sony has done it. Microsoft does it. Infinity Ward and DICE both revealed their biggest games of 2016 a month before E3. And so he's like, maybe the fact that you can go to direct to fans on Twitch now and go direct to fans on YouTube Live and Facebook Live means we don't need these press conferences. Raj, we've got you back. We've got video. We can see you. The internet is finally cooperating. What do you think? Like, you've been in the midst of E3. Is it still relevant?
I think it is, but I think it's relevant to different people for different reasons. For international media such as myself, E3 is a huge opportunity for us to get all the developers of all the games in one place and have a chat to as many of them as we possibly can. That just isn't available all the time. Yes, there's things like Skype and Google Hangouts when they work, and they can be useful for those international sort of interviews, but it's not the same as being in a room one-on-one with people who have spent the years of their lives putting together these massive titles that you want to go back and share with people all around the world. And without an event like E3, that just isn't really possible. That said, this year in particular, with the removal of Activision and EA from the show, things seem quieter. On the show floor, the last 2 days, to be honest, I spent a lot of time in sort of meeting rooms away from the show floor, but as I've been running through it, getting from meeting to meeting, it actually seemed a little bit easier. And if air conditioning is anything to go by, they completely miscatered for the number of people that were in the show yesterday, because it was freezing cold.
Really?
So it was. I don't know Fahrenheit, but I wanted a jacket over the top of my sweater. It was icy.
And like places like Comic-Con, it's usually the opposite. You're like sweating when you're in a show floor.
Exactly. I mean, you can't really put it down to that exactly,
Yeah.
but I think that's, if the air conditioning was on track for X amount of people, they definitely they got that wrong. So today it was a lot more busy, but generally the second day is one of the busiest, and tomorrow things wind down a bit earlier. So expect a lot of people in the morning, but.
Here's a question. How do you account? Well, okay. So part of what makes me agree with the most recent article about relevancy, dealing with these companies being able to reach out directly, part of this is a money issue. Companies like EA, companies like Activision, and in the past others have looked at this event and said, all right, well, we're spending whatever millions of dollars on booth space, on presentations on stage, like all of this sort of. All these costs have to be added up. And these are huge companies, lots, deep pockets, so they can afford these things. But as things start to swing the other direction, where digital sales combined with the fact that they can interface with their users directly in a way that they couldn't in 10 years ago, isn't that just arguing for the value proposition and saying, well, is it even worth us spending $5 million on booth space plus another $3 million on a production on stage? Wouldn't it be better if we put that into direct interfacing with our fans, or with whoever we need to interface with? That to me seems like at least one of the reasons why we're both seeing the exodus, but also wondering whether things are quote unquote relevant anymore. Do you agree with that?
I think there'll be a tipping point where it sort of becomes fiscally viable not to have a standard E3, and you can see what EA have done this year, where they've shifted next door. They've literally gone from the LA Convention Center to LA Live, right next door at the Staples Center. A couple of days earlier, they closed down after 2 days of being open to the general public, which is also different from E3. And it'll be interesting to see if that worked out for them or not. And I mean, only the EA execs will know. But they have still essentially bundled it with E3. They haven't moved it away to its own time of year or moved it to another location entirely. They've situated themselves right next to the conference, leading up to the conference when they know that they're going to have all the international media there as well. If they were to completely shut down and not have an event at all, that I think is an extremely telling sign. Activision have essentially pulled out, but EA and Activision are still at E3. They're just behind closed doors. So if they're not on the show floor, they've removed that cost from their budget sheets for the year. But EA have, I would argue, probably spent more on what they've done this year, and then Activision, well, they're the ones laughing all the way to the bank. They did announce the one of the biggest titles of the year, Call of Duty, months before E3, and we saw a lot of announcements leading up to E3 that we would probably normally be reserved for those big ticket items during media briefings. And I think that was sort of a domino effect of people wanting to be first to the punch. They really wanted to be, out and about and not be lost in the noise that is E3 a lot of the time.
Most of the stuff that got announced ahead of time are third parties is significant to me, because when the third parties start to feel like they need to get the word out before, that usually means they're not sure what kind of stage time they're going to get. We don't know what they're going to show of Call of Duty during the Sony press conference or whichever conference they're going to be in. So since they're sort of beholden as third parties to these platform holders, if they're not doing their own stage show like Bethesda or EA, I think they get more mileage by not leaking it early, but putting it out early and then letting some additional hype happen at E3, playables at E3, behind closed doors at E3. But you hardly ever see these early leaks and or releases from the big platform holders themselves. So I think that's why the Sony conference seemed to be the most surprising. They weren't lifting the lid on any of that until showtime, and that was mostly their first party stuff. The only thing that really showed up ahead of time were third party. So it's just an interesting thing to see. You can kind of see patterns as to how people are dancing around this event and spending more time at more grassroots events like PAX and spending more money there, and then pulling away from this larger quote unquote industry event. It must be really interesting on the ground to kind of see that happen physically around you as you go over here.
It is. I've seen it all and sort of change over the last 4 years, and that's really made a difference to how I've approached E3 and how you start to see, like last year was the first time they actually had a day where the public were involved, and that to me says that industry so much isn't being drawn, and they needed to bolster things to make it still relevant. And now you see these EA, the third parties, moving away from the event. I wouldn't be ringing a death knell for it, but I think the event itself does need to change and evolve and move with the times, because the media and the attendees around it are shifting, as is all media, moving to video. These long-form articles that a lot of people were at E3 to write previews and things like that are relevant in a lot of ways because of YouTubers and leaks and the video world that we live in. Like we were just talking about Facebook.
We could take this whole conversation and you could just replace the words E3 with CES, and everything would still apply, except maybe some of the company names. But remember that all these trade shows are just shows that are meant for people to strike business deals, whether it's with retail or whether it's with developers, manufacturing. It's a way for everyone to get together and have meetings face-to-face and get some business done that even in the days of Hangouts and Skype is harder to do over the internet. It's just nicer to have everybody all in one place. And all of these other things we're talking about are repurposing the conference. Like, well, since we're there, there'll be a lot of media attention, so let's do an announcement. Let's catch some fan attention. And that's what's getting changed when companies are starting to realize, because of Apple in the mid-2000s saying, well, wait a minute, a lot of times we can just do our direct-to-the-fan announcement and we'll get more attention because we're not competing with everything else coming out of the conference.
And E3 sort of tried this a few years ago with the hotel jump thing. Which didn't really go down overly well. I don't know if that was, I wasn't in attendance that year, but I don't know how it felt from a media perspective, whether people really enjoyed that or not, or if it was just because it was such a smaller show that the public has gotten used to, these big announcements, these big press conferences. And Sony literally did that this week. They put on a show for the media briefing. They had a full orchestra there. They had trailers. They weren't sitting there talking about financial earnings and things like they've done in years gone by. And it's turned into entertainment for the sale of entertainment. And it's interesting you mentioned like buyers before, Tom, because that's literally the majority of people that I've met this year are retail buyers. People coming out to make sure that they're buying the right thing for their purchase, for the businesses back home. Not so much the media. They're still around. And not so much the developers, but the people around the sale and facilitating of this industry.
I think that's something that a lot of these companies are struggling with. I think Sony's approach is really interesting, which is to have a big spectacle, but focus on games. Just show games. They'll do a PlayStation VR announcement as a small element of that to give it a little spice and get a little news attention, but they do most of their product announcements on their own outside of these conferences, and Microsoft has taken to doing that a little bit too, although this year they had a couple of major hardware announcements. So let us know what you think. Are these conferences, not just E3, Photokina, CeBIT, any of these conferences that you're interested in, should they just all go back to being trade shows, or is that inevitable that there will always be enough media attention on them that somebody's going to want to take advantage of that? Let's get to our pick of the day. Jamie in Are You Sure It's Not August, British Columbia, said, I wanted to recommend a game I heard on an old episode of TMS. It's probably a few years old now, but it's an incredible game called Oceanhorn, essentially a Zelda Link to the Past clone with updated graphics. Visually, the game is stunning, and the gameplay mimics that of Zelda almost to a T. For instance, crawling dungeons, collecting heart pieces, upgrading your gear. It's not cheap, $13 in Canada for iOS, but it is all-encompassing and doesn't serve any ads or in-app purchases, and all updates are free. It's a really fun game for those who love the Zelda series.
He is absolutely right. Unless Jamie's a girl, then she's also right. That's a really, really great game, and it's an homage to Zelda in a way that doesn't make it feel like a ripoff. It feels like a really, really well-made game that was inspired by many of the mechanics and many of the things that Zelda series has always done pretty well. So here, and also just a side note, more powerful tablets both on the Android and Apple side will, with like the metal technology they have in the later chips, that stuff makes water effects and environmental effects look incredible in that game. It looks as good as any console platformer you buy. So, yeah, well done, great recommendation, and it works with controllers, Bluetooth controllers, so worth messing with.
Send your picks to us, folks. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. You can find more picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. In response to Jeremy's email yesterday about driverless car racing, several people, including Mike from It's a Long Way from Everywhere, Perth, Western Australia, wrote in to say, hey, Formula E, the folks who do the electric car racing, have supported a category for autonomous cars under the name RoboRace. And the first race is planned for sometime in the 2016 to 2017 Formula E season. So there you go, Jeremy. Wish granted. Formula E is already on top of it.
That's awesome. I didn't know there was even such a thing. That's super cool.
We had the story yesterday about Amazon being fined by the FAA for improper shipment of some corrosive, I think it was called liquid fire. It was like a Drano type thing. Joe the pilot points out that the good news is the FAA rules allow the company to take half of their fine and devote it to training and bring people up to current certificate regulations. So let's say the FAA has a $350,000 fine. Let's say Amazon bargains that down to $150,000. They could use $75,000 of that to fund hazmat DG certification programs. Marlon wrote in and said he is a hazmat material shipper with UPS. And to become one, they require a very complex 2-day training that they must take every 3 years. He points out that if they're discovered not to comply with the regulations, their hazmat shipping privileges are suspended for a certain period of time. He said, we've never had it happen, but I think it's 6 months. He says, I suppose Amazon has enough pull to maybe get those rules relaxed. I don't know. And finally, though, Big Jim pointed out he has a theory as to maybe why this happened. It could have been a package going onto the wrong vehicle.
Hey Tom, it's Big Jim. Regarding yesterday's show and Amazon with regard to hazmat shipments, a couple quick points. One, usually those penalties are based upon the weight of the item and the type of item it was. Obviously, if you're shipping something of a nuclear material item, the penalty goes up quite a bit. If you are shipping something that's flammable, it's a different rate. So there's some factors that go into that. My guess is that this was just not placarded correctly, and that this was probably originally supposed to go out of Amazon's facility via truck, because we don't see any DOT penalties. My guess is if there was a true issue here with the Department of Transportation, they would have also levied fines in addition to the FAA, but that's just a guess. So again, I think this was probably just a box that went out. It wasn't placarded correctly. Somebody put an airway bill on it when it should have had a truck bill on it, and it went via air.
Interesting.
But that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Big Jim.
From Dayton,
Appreciate
Ohio,
it.
I'm Big Jim.
Your 2 cents, as always. So there you go. Lots of people from different angles here bringing the expertise. I love that. Keep it coming, folks. Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. Share your expertise with us. Well, that is it for this episode. Raj Deut, thank you for your persistence against the internet.
We got there in the end.
Yeah. No, it was great. I don't even know how you did it, but you came back with flying colors there. That was fantastic.
Thanks for having me. Always great once I'm here in LA to be on the show. It's nice to be half awake and jet lagged versus 4 a.m.
Exactly. Instead of a third of awake at 4 a.m.
Although I've got Pete now. I did Pete's the other day. So.
Hey, where can people find more of what you're doing online?
You can find most of it over at reckoner.com.au, or you can follow me on Twitter, Raj Deut, D-E-U-T, or Instagram is where a lot of photos from the E3 are going up, and video as well, so check it all out.
Scott Johnson, of course, you can find once a week right here on Daily Tech News Show and all over the place at frogpants.com. What do you got going on?
Well, probably if you aren't sick of me saying things about E3 today, then I got good news for you, because I've got a lot of content where I talk a lot about E3. I have this little show called Boop, B-E-B-O-O-P. It's over on the Frog Pants Network at frogpants.com/boop. And if you go there, you'll get live commentary podcast files on the feed and play it on SoundCloud or however you want to get it, of myself, Patrick Beja, John Jagger, all watching live conferences and commentating as we were told about those announcements. Tons and tons of those. And then after that, today, right after this show, I'll be posting a brand new episode where Patrick and I sum up the big stuff of the week. So if you want more E3 coverage, man, have I got you covered. So wherever you get your podcasts, it's the Boop Show, B-O-O-P, or just head on over to frogpants.com/boop. Check it out there. For everything else, follow me at Scott Johnson on Twitter.
We love to hear from you. Let us know what you want out of the show because you are our boss. Whether you pay us or not, we'd prefer if you paid us a little bit, though. If you're willing to support the show, go ahead to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. We are entirely funded by our listeners, so if you're supporting us already, thank you very much. Patreon.com/DTNS as well. Programming note, if you're watching live, tomorrow we're doing the show a little early, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, 1800 UTC, because I have to hit the road to head to our Hack 5 special. We're doing DTNS from the Hack 5 warehouse in San Francisco on Friday, so all of that is coming up. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY. Catch the show live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. And visit our website, dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow early with Veronica Belmont. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Silverblade says, what's that Central Time? I don't give Central Time because people in the Central Time Zone are smart enough to do the conversion themselves. Some of those other time zones, though.
Yep. Well,
Raj, thanks again, man. It was like magic when you came back that last time.
Yeah, I reset the cable modem again, and apparently a new network popped up that was 5G. So, yeah.
All right.
Seemed to do the job.
Something worked, at least. Yeah. It was perfect timing, too, because the thing we needed you for the most was the E3 conversation, and that was awesome.
Yeah, no problems. It's it is. It's really interesting down there this year. It's definitely changed. Definitely changed.
So Roger, what do we got for names?
Well, you're Tom. That's Scott. That's Raj.
Oh, and Raj, I don't know what your schedule's like. If you need to head out of here, head out whenever you need to.
Yeah. I've got like 10 minutes, so that's cool.
Okay. Yeah. Jump off whenever.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Roger.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I
we can
heard
hear
you.
Scott.
I got a bolt. I didn't realize it was almost time for our delayed hotline.
Oh, right. Go Hotline Mondays on Wednesdays.
I'm gonna
Love
go.
it.
It will end the longest podcast day of my life. I'll talk
All
to
right.
you.
Good work, man.
There's Schrodinger's app. It's both deleted and not. Rhapster, Blame E3, Gone in a Flash. Zuckerberg's own. I don't want to do the lizard.
I like Rhapster. So let's do that.
Rhapster. Okay.
Yeah, with the H too. I didn't even think about the H. That's great.
E3 Electronic Expo Exodus.
That's funny. You know what? That's funny.
Oh well. E3 is one of those. Everything has an ebb and flow.
Yeah, it's true.
Eventually, it won't be an issue. I've always wondered why they never grouped it with other forms of electronic entertainment, like let's move in music and video and to a broader setting.
Well, that's interesting because CES came out of the music show. E3 came out of CES. It would be like the circle is complete if music moved back into E3.
Like it could be the 3 E's would be video games, music, and video movies, TV shows, movies.
Yeah, I feel like...
Well, they've got Samsung and T-Mobile there this year as well.
Oh, that's interesting. For VR with Samsung?
No, they're showing it's got a big Galaxy sign over it. I haven't been in there yet. I know
mobile game,
Wayne was at the booth this morning.
Well, then.
Yeah, in a way, they're going to have to do what Comic-Con has done, which is move away from strictly being about
comics,
and moving more into a general pop culture.
If you want to grow, that's what happens, which is why we get MTV with no music and Sci-Fi doing wrestling.
I liked it when they had that guy come on and BS you about your dead relatives. What was that one? He would come
Sci-Fi?
on. Yeah, remember they had that show? He was like he was supposedly
the ghost finder people?
Like it was like it would be he picked people out of the crowd and ask you questions.
Oh no, I never saw that.
Like did you have a family member that recently died?
Oh,
I'm trying to remember the name of that show and I don't remember it.
John, someone or other.
I'm getting a J.
I mean, his whole thing is a sham, but
It's a
I
shame.
think that's the
Wow.
next. Might be the. Let me ask you this, Raj. Was E3 at least on the floor still male heavy? Like it was like 70% male.
I've definitely noticed more women around, or like attendees. It's just it's a deluge of selfie sticks with cameras at the moment.
Those are annoying.
It's like every PR company's invited 100 YouTubers to one media outlet. And
probably what it was.
Yeah. It's really interesting. But there's, you see the old stalwarts there. Like I bumped into Jeff Bacala the other day. Kanada, he did some video stuff with me the other day. So, it's just evolving. It's changing. So, and a lot of those YouTubers are women. So that could explain the numbers increase, I'd say.
Yeah, I think the last E3 I went to was in 2010, but the last old style E3, or not the old style, but the one that everyone remembers with the booth bays and stuff was 2005, and I was at that one. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. I almost went deaf because everyone cranks everything so loud.
Yeah, it's pretty loud. I don't think that's changed. It's pretty ridiculous. And some impressive stands. So, 2K this year have this huge stand, which is the game set in like a Louisiana sort of style, New Orleans sort of thing.
Yeah, I saw Derek Chen's Snapchats kind of touring around. It looked like a movie set.
Yeah, it's incredible. And then they've got a band playing, and you sort of go through it inside, and then they've got multiple theaters set up in.
Mafia 3.
Mafia 3, yeah. So they've taken over EA's old spot, which was a gigantic sort of area. So they've definitely lived up to that one.
All right, well, we're going to shut down the streams here. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Again, if you're watching live earlier tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. Talk to you tomorrow.